I was thinking for a bit of fun.
Anyway, I can't talk about this book without talking about that book. I had a very nice long career at P&G, and for over 20 years I thought I was immune to the gender inequality issue. I thought I was immune. And then I got to the senior vice president level and I realised that I was not. At that level, for the first time in my life, I'm in a male-dominant culture. I never had been before. I'm in board meetings, exec meetings that are 80% plus men. And I finally understood how difficult it is to be a woman in that culture. And I'm really sorry I didn't understand it before, but that's when I understood it, how difficult it is to feel comfortable, to feel relaxed, to perform at your best and to be valued for what you can bring. So actually I was quite fascinated by the dynamics because I didn't understand them at that time. I do now, but I didn't understand that time. So I read a lot of books and a lot of research to try to understand. And what I realised the more I read was, of course, it wasn't me and it wasn't P&G and it wasn't the men around me. They were mostly good, decent men with good intentions, mostly. It wasn't them. Everywhere that I looked, every data that I looked at, every country, every industry, business, sport, politics, everything, no matter how equal that the organisation started out at the bottom, by the top, it was 90% plus men in the senior leadership positions. 5% of global CEOs are women. 9% of heads of state. So I had an exploding head at this point. My head was exploding. It was exploding with all this data this horrible data that I had learnt about. It was exploding with frustration. It was, and it still is, exploding with the frustration that women, 50% of the world's population, intelligence, capability, leadership ability, by the way, were only representing less than 10% of the leadership. I was just really irritated by that. And also exploding because by this time I had a really good understanding of why it happens. I had a really good understanding of why it is that we somehow choose the man 9 times out of 10, when arguably we should choose the man 5 times out of 10. But the other 5 times, there should have been a woman that we chose. All those invisible forces that work against women and favour men in the workplace were just whirring around my head. So I had to put it somewhere. So I wrote Why Men Win at Work, and I put it there. And Why Men Win at Work was very much written for women and for men. In many ways it was written more for men actually than it was for women. I knew then, I know now that it is just critical that that men are on board with this. As we've said, men, you are 90% of the leadership of the world. You take or influence every single decision that's ever made. So frankly, we won't get anywhere on this or on anything without you. And what I knew was that most men don't read classic feminist books. Or if they do read them, page 2, they throw them aside. Most men, looking at Alfie, I think Alfie does. They throw them aside because most feminist books are understandably very angry. And men don't tend to like the anger very much, so they don't really go after that. So I worked really hard on that book. I worked really hard to not be angry and to really engage men in the issue, keep men with me. I worked really hard in the keynotes as well and the workshops, keep them with me, keep them learning and get them to the point of, yes, I get this, and this is really, really important. And that did work. It does work to an extent. You know, I've had so many men over the last few years saying, I read your book, I saw your keynote, and I've had an epiphany. I've had an epiphany, the penny's dropped. You've made me understand the gender inequality issue in a way that I never understood it before. And that is fantastic. There really are a lot of what I call feminists out there, and I think most of them in this room probably, so thank you. That is absolutely brilliant, but there are not enough. There are just not enough men who get it, and deeply get it to the point that they are committed to actually doing something about it. Too many men still see this as charity work, gender equality programs, supporting women. It's charity work that you do on the side when there's nothing else on. And as a result, it gets too easily deprioritized. So there's a pandemic, there's a war, there's a president who doesn't believe in women or diversity, for example, and suddenly all the gender equality programs disappear, all the budgets get cut, because there isn't enough of that really, really deep belief in it from most of the men. Now, I still believe, I will always believe that we absolutely need men to be on board. I really believe we won't make progress without it. And I believe that men will come more and more on board. And I think the reason that they will is slowly they will realise that this isn't charity, this is business. This is a business strategy. It grows business. Having women represented in leadership makes organisations stronger. It makes businesses stronger. That is, I'm certain of that, and the data proves that. So men will, all the other men, they will catch up. But in the meantime, women aren't winning at work. We are not winning at work. We are still, 6 years on from the first book being written. We're still not winning at work. We've gone backwards in many senses. But there is something we can do about it as women. While we wait for the men, there are some things that we can do about it. And that's where this book comes in. It's called the How to Win at Work book, an empowering career guide for today's working women. And what I've done is taken everything that I share in my keynotes, my workshops and retreats, coaching sessions, all of those things, and I've put it all in here. So I take all of those invisible forces that I know hold women back. So the invisible power of culture, the competence versus confidence equation, the umbrella theory, the time gap, the age gap, the lack of sisterhood at senior levels, and many, many more. And I take them and I give basically in each chapter insights, career advice, tips, strategies, action plans, exercises to work through them and overcome them. So it really is like a self-coaching, it's a self-coaching career guide for women. So this one very much is for women. There's a little chapter in there for men, but this one is absolutely for women, because we need to do something while we wait for all those programs and those budgets to come back. Now, obviously, I've got a ton of my own career advice for you in there, but I also did call upon some incredible experts who work in this field to help with some areas where I know some stuff, and you know me, I'll give an opinion on everything, but some real experts. And a couple of those are here tonight, so I did want to just give them a shout out. Can I get a wave from Sheila Schroeder?
I'm all the way back.
Hey Sheila. So Sheila is the author of It's Time to Talk. She is just brilliant with money, right? So, and every woman should be brilliant with money. So she's got some brilliant tips in there as well. And Rebecca is here. Rebecca, can you give us a wave? Rebecca. Rebecca is in there with some fantastic, this woman knows how to get a pay rise. My God. Rebecca is in there. Rebecca is the founder of an incredible women's network called Peer Suite. I have the honour of being a founding member. Thank you, Rebecca. And if you're not a member, then you should be. It's absolutely brilliant. While we're saying thank yous, is Nigel here?
Yeah.
Nigel, give us a wave. We have to say thank you to Nigel.
Okay.
Nigel is the designer of the cover of Why Men Win at Work and the How to Win at Work book. He's an incredible brand designer. So thank a huge thank you to Nigel. So tons of career advice in there. I thought that I will just read a little bit because that's what they do in the films at book launches, isn't it? So I'm going to just do that because I feel like sort of have to. Now, can I actually hold the book and the microphone at the same time? I'm going to need my glasses, Cully.
Where are they?
It's a very good point. Could you just hold the microphone for a second? Talk amongst yourselves. I am going to need my glasses for this. Incredible. We are a very long way from real equality, which, in case we are in any doubt, means 50% female. That's where this book comes in. I've written the How to Win at Work book to help you navigate through all this. Think of this as your personal coaching manual, where you will find everything I share in the work I do as a keynote speaker, workshop leader, consultant, and coach. The concept of a career is different for everyone and dependent on all of the other priorities you have and will have in your life. However, whatever form you would like your career to take, I don't want gender inequality issues to hold you back from fulfilling your potential. And if you have the potential to be a leader...
But what was your women and confidence? What? Discuss. I tell you, I'm not the person who's trying to gaslight you, Esther. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, with this issue? There are fashions, aren't there? I'm looking at how issue works, and there are fashions about things. It's fashionable. It's fashionable to say. It was fashionable a couple of years ago to say there's no such thing as imposter syndrome. Yes. And at the moment, so women are confident, and I'm afraid it's just not. It's not true, right? I'm with you. The data shows us, and these are generalizations. Of course, there are men who lack confidence, and there are women who have a huge amount of confidence. Of course, but the data consistently shows from extensive research that women undervalue their competence. They have less confidence in their competence than men, and they've done tests literally on women who've come out of exams. And they've asked them how they performed in the exam, and their confidence was saying they're here, and the men's confidence was saying they were that they were there, and then actually they'd come out in pretty much average exactly the same place. So we know that women generally are less confident. We know it comes from school, right? A huge amount of this comes from school. I talk a lot about perfectionist syndrome. We teach girls perfectionist syndrome at school. Meanwhile, boys go and get into all sorts of trouble and do all sorts of things and learn that it's absolutely fine to not be perfect and to fail and to get it wrong. And they take that into the workplace. Meanwhile, girls take into the workplace that they have to be A+, 100% perfect, which in the workplace is absolute nonsense. So I think you're right. It's fashionable at the moment to say we are confident. It's like, no, women do not have the confidence in themselves generally that their competence deserves, and that's why I think this strengths and superpowers work is so important, because that's when you go really down to that core of, do you know what, actually, with humility, I'm really good at that. I'm really good. Women need to get to the point where they don't think they're brilliant at everything. They know their flaws, but they know what they're good at, and they bring it, and if it's not valued, they take it somewhere else. So yeah, I'm totally, the fashion will pass. Totally with you. Quilly.
Can I just,
Gill, thank you. Hugely inspiring overview. Can't wait to read it. Thank you. It's fantastic work. You mentioned in your preamble that you think we've gone backwards recently. Can you say a bit more about that and why you think that's happening, and the role you see for the tools in your book to hopefully redress some of that?
Yeah, I think the last few years have been a bit interesting. There is progress in some ways. So, for example, board positions that we do have, I think it's currently 43% of board positions are women. And by the way, that is because somebody said, we need to get to 40%, and they set it as a target, and everyone resists the target. So we could have a whole conversation about that. But the reality is that made it happen. But if you look at executive positions, we're going backwards. I think it's about 32% of executive positions globally. It's more like 25%, I think, in the US. And the reality is companies are run by the exec. They're not actually run by the board. And I think, and by the way, there is this whole dynamic of, even if you look at the exec profile, you may see roughly 30% women, but actually about 75% of those will be in HR, or not, absolutely no disrespect to HR, but the roles that are considered the crucible roles, finance, they are absolutely dominated by men. And I think there's been a backlash against women in the last few years. There's a sense of, and I actually talked about it in the first book, I think we just do this horrible thing of creating this perception that there's more equality than there is, and I think it's really dangerous. I think a lot of people, certainly a few years ago, would have said, we've got equality now, it's fine, we're close enough, and you know what, it's going to happen naturally, and in a few years we'll be there, because we make such a fuss about every woman who gets appointed CEO, or every woman who's running the country gets massive profile, to the point that you get this perception that there are women everywhere. And then there's this perception that, only women are getting the jobs. I think that media perception has done us an enormous amount of harm. And then there's, let's not even go to the manosphere and all of that. I mean, there is a whole backlash. There's a fantastic book called Backlash. Is Susan Faludi, is it, who wrote Backlash? Phenomenal book. I mean, she wrote it, in 1970? A long time ago. It's a phenomenal book, and basically what she lays out is that this goes in cycles, that when women get to a point where they start to look like they might have a grasp at equality, then society will basically close them down, try and get them back in the kitchen. And I think that sadly that is really, really what we've seen in the last few years for various reasons, and we just got to not allow it to happen. And I think I'm still optimistic, because I think women are very strong, and I think women are more, I hear more and more women talking now about 50%. They're not settling anymore for, less than that. They know what they're worth. But I do think there are more and more men, and I think for every bad man we hear about, there are thousands and thousands of good men who get it. And so I do have hope that we'll get through this. But it has been a rough few years. And I mean, if you look right now, I think everyone who works in this space will agree, if you look at the amount of effort and budget that's being put into equality and diversity programs now versus 5 years ago, tiny, right? It's disappeared. I mean, this year, International Women's Day, basically most of the people who got in touch were basically women desperately trying to keep the programs going, but with no budget. Whereas 3 years ago, it was, we've got the whole organisation behind us, the CEOs behind us. So yeah, I think it's a very long answer to your question, but it's going back. But I think there are enough good people that I have hope it's gonna move forward.
97.
So I can imagine that's fun.